Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Welcome to the Weddell Sea Expedition 2019 video conference live from the Weddell Sea in Antarctica. My name is Lizzie Rosenberger, and I am Reach the World's program manager for the Weddell Sea Expedition. For the last 44 days, we have been working closely with the Explorers Club and the Royal Geographic Society to bring this groundbreaking expedition to classrooms all across North America and around the world. We've been thrilled today to partner with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants to share the excitement of the Weddell Sea Expedition with even more students through this YouTube Live. All of this has been made possible with the wonderful support from the Flotilla Foundation. So today, let's meet our moderator and host for today's event, but with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, Jesse Heelgrant. Hi, Jesse.
Hi, Lizzie, and welcome, everyone. So the Weddell Sea Expedition 2019 is a major international scientific expedition that has brought world-leading glaciologists, marine biologists, oceanographers, and marine archaeologists aboard the SA Agulhas II, one of the largest and most modern polar research vessels in the entire world. The expedition has been investigating the ice shelves around the Weddell Sea, and in particular, the Larsen Sea ice shelf, which had a huge iceberg break-off just 2 years ago. They've worked to document the rich and varied and little-studied life of the marine Weddell Sea ecosystem, and most recently, they attempted to locate and survey the wreck of Sir Ernest Shackleton's ship Endurance, which was crushed by the ice over 100 years ago in the Weddell Sea in 1915. We're joined today by Holly Ewart, who oversees and coordinates the logistics and educational outreach for the Weddell Sea Expedition. She's been posting articles at reachtheworld.org, and we're going to share that link with you guys in the YouTube link and in Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants later. I'm holding weekly video conferences, so many of you have already met her. Today, she brings two exciting guests from the expedition team. We have Dr. Lucy Woodall, the head marine biologist, and Mensun, the expedition's chief of exploration. They'll be speaking to us about the marine life they discovered and the search for the shipwreck Endurance. Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us from the ship, guys, and take it away.
Hello, everyone. Hi from Antarctica. We are currently in the heart of the Weddell Sea, which really does feel like the edge of the world. We are currently leaving on our way back to Penguin Bukta, but this has been one of the most incredible expeditions, and we've all been humbled and super grateful to be in such a beautiful and remote place on our planet. We were all talking last night and saying how we really do feel like we are at the edge of the world. I am really excited to bring to you guys today two very, very important people on board the Agulhas II. Mr. Mensun, who is our Chief of Exploration and Head Archaeologist, and Dr. Lucy Woodall, who is our Head of Marine Biology from the Necton from the University of Oxford in the UK. So I thought that the best way to do this is, as we've done before, for those of you who are back, hello again. And for those of you who are new, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for tuning in. So we're going to start by screen sharing with you some amazing photographs from this week, so you can get an idea of what we've been up to in the Weddell Sea. And then I'm going to pass over to our special guests to give you a little bit of a talk about the science that we've done that's successful, and to give you a little bit of history of Shackleton and his story. So without further ado, let me just try this screen share. Get into the screen share. Share. Let me get onto my presentation. Awesome. Okay, so this week we were really fortunate to be in the Weddell Sea and see some beautiful minke whales. Now you can all see how clear the ocean is, and we could actually see through the water and see the full length of the minkies. And you can see here, last night during the sunset, there were 3 of these swimming around the port side of the Agulhas II. Everyone gathered together to take photographs. And actually, it was the most silent I've ever heard anyone on the ship, just because of the beauty and the magnificent scenery that was around us. There were also emperor penguins, Weddell seals. There was a flourishing marine life around us in the Weddell Sea last night. We also went out onto an ice floe. We went over the sinking site of the Endurance, and the crew of the Agulhas II made this awesome sign that you can see in the background, which every participant of the Weddell Sea Expedition signed. So here you can see me getting a snowball dolloped on my head, but this is part of what some of the team of the technicians who have been operating our AUVs, which are our underwater autonomous vehicles. And I know that some of you tuned in to the live from the ops room call a few weeks, maybe last week. And if you haven't seen it, it's worth watching on YouTube. I know that the link has been shared by Lizzie from Reach of the World. So here is us with our amazing purser, Sibongile, and our other marine biologist, Bettina Frino, who also did a Reach the World 2 weeks ago, which is also worth seeing, and in front of over the wreck site of the Endurance. So here you can see the coordinates of where the wreck went down. We also did something that I don't think anyone can claim they've ever done on an ice floe in Antarctica before. We played a game of cricket. And I just wanted to share some photos with you of the pure joy and excitement that everybody had yesterday, crew and scientists and biologists and technicians all coming together to play cricket on the ice. So here you can see me running to get my points. And another one here. This is when one of our technicians got bowled out straight away. And then something quite awesome happened. While we were playing cricket, there's not much that stops the scientists and the team on board here in their tracks. There's not much that stops everyone talking. However, halfway through our cricket game, an emperor penguin just strolled on by. And as you can see, everybody here stopped. And look how close this emperor penguin got. He was a very, very curious guy and waddled on up to us and actually got incredibly close to all of us. And so this is the Weddell Sea Expedition team 2019. It is an interdisciplinary international team, and we have all been so grateful to have ventured into the heart of the Weddell Sea in the footsteps of Shackleton and his men. It's been an incredibly humbling experience, and it's been a very unforgettable experience. So I thought that this was a photograph that I should share to you. We have a motto on the Weddell Sea Expedition, which is one team, one dream. And we really have come together from South Africa, from Norway, from England, from America, from France, and even more. So we have had a phenomenal expedition. So without further ado, I'm just going to swap the screen back so you can all see Lucy's wonderful face.
Hey,
hello again. So I'm going to pass you over to Lucy Woodall, who's going to take you through the very successful science program that we have had here in the Weddell Sea.
Afternoon, everyone. It's my real pleasure to talk to you all. So I'm going to go through all of the science activities. Now, you might have seen a few of the pictures before, maybe when Bettina was on talking to you about the exciting biology that we found. But I think it's really important to bring everything together because actually we're a small ship and a relatively small number of people. We've done a huge amount. And I feel that was really important to capture, just the variety all the way through from the biology that we've been doing all the way through to the engineering and the ice observations as well. I mean, it's just sort of such an incredible range.
So I'll screen share for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Into the polar vortex we go.
It's really funny.
Here we go. Right.
Great. So thank you, Holly, because you introduced me. Yeah, I'm Lucy. I'm from the University of Oxford and principal scientist for the organisation Nekton, and I'm lead biologist on this expedition. And our main question was trying to understand what lives on the seafloor, why it lives there, and how might that change in the future. Well, as I said, I'm first going to give you a flavour of some of the other research that's been done on board the ship, because actually a lot of that research we'll be able to incorporate into our questions of why and how. Okay, so first I'd like to show you this map. It shows you where we've come from. So on the right-hand side is where we started, and we came all the way around the top, right over to the left side where you see those blue dots. And then all the way down that coastline, the side of the peninsula there. And then you'll see the lots of little blue dots right by A68, which is the iceberg that carved off of Larsen Sea. And the next slide gives us a little more detail about all of the science activities. And all I want you to notice here is how many dots there are for quite a small period of time that we were actually there doing science, that the ice allowed us to be in the area. And all the different types of equipment we put down. We sampled water, we sampled mud, we sampled ice, we measured the ice, we measured the seabed, we looked at the biology. And bringing all of these things together is actually a really unique part of this expedition. This multidisciplinary aspect is, I think, incredibly important because those are the things, the overlapping observations, then again, I guess the really exciting results. So these are what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about all of these different aspects. And on board, we have at least one expert in each of these different areas. So we'll start off with remote sensing. So not only is this really interesting by itself to have a look at the pictures, this helps our amazing navigators on the bridge, our captain and our ice pilot, to be able to take us through the right way. So these are some of the images from a few days ago, having a look where we've come from, there behind I-68, and then that red square, which is where we're sitting at the moment. Along with those observations of the ice, we've been able to do something that's truly unique. We've been able to put the AUVs in the water, those big orange things there and down there at the bottom of the screen. We've been able to put them underneath the ice and have a look up. So that's a bit unusual, having a look up to the sky and look at the shape of the ice. And that's that picture you can see there on the left-hand side with all those little pinnacles coming down. You might think it's flat underneath, but this gives a really good interpretation in the fact that it's not. And that changes its properties, and that is really important for some of our engineers on board, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And the sediment core you can see there in the right, that actually is mud from the bottom of the ocean. That's pretty cool in itself. But what the scientists do is they use that to understand what's happened in the past. And this gives us a really good idea of how we can predict what we're seeing today and how that might change in the future. So we also have a team of oceanographers on board. And that means oceanography means everything to do with the ocean. So we have biological oceanographers and chemical and physical oceanographers. And our biological oceanographers use those nets that you can see there to the right. They're called bongo nets. You can imagine bongo drums turned up on their ends. And they sample the tiny little phytoplankton and zooplankton communities. And it's really important to understand how they change because they're some of the driving forces that drive some of the biggest animals that we see down here in Antarctica. And when we come to our chemical and our physical oceanographers, they're really interested in the water, what's in the water, and actually the water masses. Now, you might think that's a bit weird because water's just water. But actually, in the ocean, the water on the surface is different to the water you find in the middle. It doesn't mix all the way through. And this is incredibly important for how the weather functions on our planet. And it's really important to understand right here in the Weddell Sea, because this is where some of those processes start. So that equipment that you can see on the left-hand side at the top is called a Niskin rosette. And all those dark columns you can see are bottles. And we fire them all at different depths. So we can collect water from different depths. That's pretty cool. We can collect water from thousands of meters down. And when it comes up to the surface, it'll be just like that water. So now we look at ice coring. So the teams also based in South Africa have been looking at the ice. And this is actually one of the really fun things that we were all doing yesterday. You can see the biological layer there that's visible at the very bottom, living underneath the ice. But we measure those ice cores for various different physical and chemical parameters. And again, this is important for understanding how that ice actually functions. So, for example, bringing in some of the other pieces of work that are going on here, how the ship is going to move through that ice. So this is, again, one of those really cool multidisciplinary projects. And this is one of them we're talking about here. These are ice observations. So we will look and see what the ice is like, how the ship reacts to that ice. And then when we can, we'll get onto the ice and take actual measurements about that piece of work. So a really cool way of getting lots of scientists who are experts in their own particular field to work together. And the final part of this team is the engineering team. So they don't include not just the observations of the ice and the physical parameters from on the ice itself, they actually have a network of sensors that are fitted to the ship. And it's almost like sort of the nerves of the ship. And And this shows us how the ship is moving when we're in the ice, and also how the people are reacting. You can imagine your desks today and your chairs moving around all the time and then suddenly stopping and suddenly moving again. That's a little bit off-putting. So it's really important for us to be able to record that and what that is like in comparison with how the ship is moving. So that's what they're doing. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the biology. And we had 3 main questions. So our very most important question that Bettina's probably spoken to you about is trying to understand how the biological communities are different when they've been uncovered for ice for different periods of time. And we think that if it's just been uncovered, there's not going to be much life there. But if it's been uncovered for maybe 100 years, there's going to be a huge amount of animals living in that area. So that's what we're going to set out and test. And that's the work that Bettina's going to do for the next 3 years. To add to that, we're going to understand the bacterial communities, because again, these are the drivers of the life in these environments, both in the water and in the sediment. And finally, trying to understand what both of these things mean for the future. Can we put some predictions in? So we know that ice shelves are collapsing, largely due to climate change. But does that really matter to the biological communities here in Antarctica? So here we can see a little ice shelf and an iceberg. And where you can see the words under ice conditions, those are the very, very darkest places. Maybe there's not quite so much food there because light generally means food. But there could be lots of currents coming through, so maybe food's been taken from somewhere else. These are all the sorts of questions we have to ask ourselves. But you can see that that quite protected environment might be really quite different to out there where it says those open water conditions. So what does that really look like? Well, on the right, you can see the ship's crane, but underneath that big white cliff, that's actually an ice shelf. So you can see just how big it is and how protected you would be if you were underneath. But of course, here we can just see the top part of the ice shelf. It extends many, many meters down below the surface. And here on the left-hand side, we can see what sea ice looks like. So you can already see that it's much thinner, and sometimes if you look really carefully right in the middle of the shot, you might even see a seal. So how do we look at the seafloor? Because those are one of the big things we've been interested in. And I think Bettina showed you these earlier. These are 2 robots we have working for us. One of them is attached to the ship, and that is the remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, on the left-hand side, that's yellow. And on the right-hand side, you can see one of the Hugin AUVs, the autonomous underwater vehicles that Holly's already spoken about today. And these both have cameras, and they can picture the sea floor for us because we're not able to go down. We're not like whales, you can spend time down there, eh? That would be really nice. So what have we found so far? So lots of really amazing creatures. So those on the bottom are like starfish. They hold their arms up, on the ones on the left and the right-hand side. They hold their arms up, and that's how they eat their food. Their food comes by them in the currents. You can also see some sea stars, and they collect their food from the sediment. And that's the same with some of our favourites, the sea pigs. You can see 2 different types of sea pigs there. And they eat a lot of their food from the seabed, but sometimes they've also got some little tentacles which they can extend up into the water column as well. And some of the other things we found, so again, most of these are filter feeders, so have their food from the water. We can have the beautiful coloured corals over there on the right-hand side, and then some of the sea anemones. They think they look quite different, that black one and then the pink one there on the left-hand side. But in fact, they're both sea anemones. One of them has got a long stalk, so it can hold its head up above the sea floor, collecting more food. And one of them has lots and lots of tentacles. So again, that's how it can get its food. And then on the bottom there, we've got things that look like pitchers, but they're actually sponges. And water goes through them and they collect food as the water passes through. However, not everything filter feeds, and we do have some very special fish called ice fish. You can see this one's got a very big eye down there on the right-hand side. And they have antifreeze in their bodies. So that stops them from freezing. If you put a regular fish down here, it wouldn't be able to survive. So this is a very special adaptation for living in these cold Antarctic waters. But sometimes we're really lucky. And if you look at the back, just to the right, zoom in, thanks, Holly, we can see an amazing octopus. We were so excited to see this. I had to look very carefully. So there we go. I'm showing you one of the most exciting moments. And the final part of the biological work we've been doing is collecting the water in the sediment so that we can find out all the bacteria, the very tiniest organisms on the planet, and trying to understand how they differ in different locations and why those communities might change. So just in case any of you were wondering how we get on and off the ice, I thought I would throw these 3 pictures in. So you can see the wonderful ship there head into some ice, and that basket there, and that's got somebody in it. And that basket in that middle picture is come down onto the ice. And in the final picture, you can see me in a selfie. That was yesterday afternoon after we had that amazing experience that Holly was talking about with the Emperor. Brilliant. Thank you very much for listening.
Oh, where are we? Thank you so much, Lucy. That was awesome. So yeah, as you guys can see, it's been a really successful scientific program. We really do have the leading experts of these fields on board the Agulhas 2 here on this expedition. I've certainly learned a huge amount. And Lucy even let me go into the biology lab and help her with counting all the krill. So I've also learned a huge amount. But I'm also really super excited to introduce you guys to a very important man on board the expedition, Mr. Mensun. He is our Chief of Exploration. He has been leading us through the search for the Endurance, Shackleton's lost ship that she got stuck in the ice and crashed in 1915. But he's also our Head of Archaeology and has a huge history in working and finding shipwrecks all around the globe. So maybe we could start with giving Mensun a bit of an introduction. Hello, Mr. Mensun.
Thank you, Holly. Thanks, Lucy. That was fascinating.
Thanks.
Okay, so where do we go from here? I think everybody knows a little bit about Shackleton, right?
Yeah.
But maybe I'll just take them through a wee bit of the history, and then we can talk about what we've been doing.
Definitely.
What do you think?
Good idea.
Okay, so guys, it's like this. Shackleton, his big dream was to get to the South Pole, but I think, as most of you know, the Norwegians got there first. So after that, what could he do next? And his big dream became being the first person to cross the continent of Antarctica from one side to the other by way of the pole. Never been.
Oh, you guys have cut out for a second. Let's see if we can get him back. All right. See, we're so excited. We're just starting to learn about Shackleton, and did he make it across the pole? We'll find out in a second. Let's see. Sometimes bringing internet from the edges of the earth leads to temporary delays. Hey, Lizzie.
Yes.
I know they're in touch with you guys. I don't know if they're... Oh, are they back? Maybe they're back. I don't know.
I will send them a message, and maybe we can have a question that happens, and then we can share it with them when they get back online.
Certainly. All right. So I just want to note too, so Miss Daniel's class, if you guys want to sign in with a thing where you can do questions directly, please do that. But yes, let's start with Miss Fisher's class. If you guys have a question, then we'll pass it on to our speakers when they arrive back as we try and get them. Yeah, guys. Hi, guys. And Miss Fisher's class joining us from Mishawaka, Indiana. Do you guys have a question? Come on up.
Go ahead.
Why do you have a big boat? Why don't you use a little boat?
Good question. All right. So we'll check that out in a minute. I think they're back. Let's see. Hey, Weddell Sea.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Sorry about that.
Welcome
Hi.
back. So
Back.
you were
This is very
just
normal in Antarctica. As it just reminds us all of how remote we are.
yes. You were just diving into talking about Shackleton, but I wanted to pass on. We took a question from a class while we were waiting, and the question is, why have a big ship instead of a small ship? Why the big vessel?
Why have the
Okay, yeah. Oh, you mean why did Shackleton have a big ship or a small ship, or why do we? We. Okay, well, you need a big beefy ship like this to pound your way through the ice. The ice out here can be up to 6-7 meters thick. And for that, you really got to just shove and punch and bludgeon your way through. And for that, you've got to have a big, powerful ship.
Awesome.
It's really
All
cool
right,
as well because I was just going to say, when we break through the ice, we don't actually go straight into the ice. What we do is the ship actually lifts up over the ice sheets and it comes down and it crashes. So maybe next time you guys are in ice, if you try running into the ice, you'll find that you won't actually break it. But if you jump up and land on top of the ice, it will crack. So that's what the ship does. It goes on top and breaks.
Hundreds of children running into the ice now.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually, what Holly was saying, because, yeah, the technique now is very different to what it was back then. The Endurance, by contrast, didn't ride up over the ice and then punch down, as it were. It tried to slice its way in and then force it apart. And the Endurance was built by the best polar shipbuilders of the day, the Norwegians. They understood ice in a way the Brits didn't, and they made the ship to slice into it at speed and then just cut their way through. The difference is they could cut through first-year ice, but we here in this big ship, we can cut through multi-year ice. That's really thick, heavy stuff, all gnarled up. You know, brilliant ship, this, I tell you. 100 years on exactly between the two ships, Endurance and the Angulus, and technologically vastly different worlds.
Yeah.
Shackleton, if he could see this ship, what would he make of it? I don't know, guys.
Astounded.
He wouldn't know where to start, would
I mean, we've got...
We think of another adventure, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But we've got...
Yeah, you know, he could get into a ship from, let's say, 600, 700 years before, know exactly what to do to motivate, to move that ship, to energize it. But 100 years later, get into this ship, you'd be lost. There isn't even a wheel on the bridge of this ship. You all do it with your fingers, things like that. It's crazy.
We've got an awesome South African crew as well. We've got our captain, Knowledge Bengu, and an ice pilot, Freddie Lightem, who can navigate through any sea ice. It's so impressive how they've got us here.
But the thing is, they absolutely love it, don't they? I mean, normally they have to go and sort of resupply stations down here, but with us, they actually go right into the heart of the sea, and they can really punch hell out of it. It's like if you're driving a super high-end sports car, but you can only drive it at 60 miles an hour, which is basically what they've been doing. But now they can really pull out the plugs and just go for it, hell for leather, and they love it.
That was the most outstandingly enthusiastic three-person answer we've ever had in the history of this program, so thank you.
A lot of enthusiasm on the vessel.
Yeah.
As eager as I am to get to more questions, Mensun, if you want to just do a quick overview of the Shackleton's journey, that would be great, and then we'll dive into more, because that was amazing.
The screen share going for you as well.
Let's wrap this up, because we got questions.
Let me put this on for you. There we go.
Oh, yeah, there she is. That's the Endurance. Beautiful. Yeah, very, very elegant ship. Look at that, guys. Sails out, everything. Look at those really fine eye-sweet lines, that sharp bow, that beautiful counter stern. Whoa, sexy ship, I tell you. Anyway, yeah, so they got into Weddell Sea, and almost straight away they're into ice, just as you see here, and they became beset. That means they couldn't move. They were like an almond in a bar of chocolate. They were stuck. They couldn't go forward, they couldn't go back, and in the end, they had to live out the entire Antarctic winter stuck in the ice. Now, it had actually happened before to other ships elsewhere in Antarctic, and what they're hoping for was when the spring came, the ice would break up and somehow or another she'd kind of be spat out and they'd carry on with the project. It wasn't like that at all. What happened was the pack ice just gripped her hard and then bit by bit ground her and crushed her and just tore her end from end. And yeah, here we see it, this picture right here. Look what a mess she's in. That's how she was. She's down at the bow. That's the stern you see up there at the back. And eventually she sunk. She went down like the Titanic, bow first. And the guy you see there on the left of the pipe, that's Frank Wild. He was Shackleton's number 2. And I often wonder what he's thinking at that moment. Anyway, so they lived on the ice for many months, and eventually they got off and they had to make their way across the sea in 3 little boats, open boats, all the way to Elephant Island. And Shackleton left them at that point. He went on in one of the boats to South Georgia to get help. But it was an incredible story of survival. This really was the greatest escape ever, if you like. And in the picture here, let's see, you have, there are 28 of them on the ship. And here you probably have, let's say, 27 of them, because the photographer, Frank Hurley, he's not in shot, but the rest of them are. And the guy in the very center with the silly hat sort of pulled down over one side of his face, he's wearing a kind of a white thing. Yeah, that guy right. Yeah, the guy with the dark hat, that's Shackleton. And just off to his left, our right, the guy in the white polo neck, that's the great Frank Worsley. He was the captain of the Endurance. And oh, you can pick out a lot of faces here. Little man in front there in front of Worsley, that was Chippy McNeish. He had the famous cat on board. He was the carpenter, and his big enemy on board was Ord Lees, and I'm looking to find him. He's got to be here somewhere. Usually you can pick out Ord Lees because of his hat, and guess what? He's not wearing this day. He's not wearing it today, but he's in there somewhere. So there were lots of little, it wasn't always, how shall I put it, perfect harmony amongst this group of people. They had their squabbles, as in any group. But somehow or another, thanks to Shackleton, he got them out, and they all survived.
Outstanding, guys. That's amazing. By the way, for what it's worth, their classes, if you guys ever get a chance to read South, the Endurance Expedition, about that expedition, it's one of the greatest books you will ever read in your life. So I just encourage that. There it is. When you watch a movie and you get vested in it and then you end up crying when they achieve things at the end, it's the only book that ever made me cry. So we'll stick with that. Let's dive into questions, guys. So we've got a few questions with us, a few groups with us live, and we've got over 40 groups watching live on YouTube right now, which is amazing. So we're going to start with some of our live classes, and then we'll dive in. So Mrs. Paus's class, which is joining us from Hillsdale, New Jersey. If you guys have a question,
Any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead. She was here.
Okay. Is there a certain reason why you guys want to find the ship?
Good question.
Was there a special reason why we tried to find the ship?
That's it.
Why did we try and find the ship?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question. It cuts to the heart of everything. Why do we try to find the Endurance? Well, okay, I got to be honest and say it isn't really going to tell us very much that we don't already know. And that's me as an archaeologist talking. Normally, when you go into an excavation or a shipwreck project like this, you have questions. Here, we know how the Endurance was made. We know what was on board. We know everything they did. There are no real surprises there. But we want to find this wreck, and we want to preserve it, and we want to record what it's like on the seabed. So as we move into the future, we've got a record of its details on the seabed, and hopefully sometime beyond our lifetimes, when conservation science has moved ahead, maybe, just maybe, they can think about recovering and saving the Endurance.
And we had a very similar, there was a moment where we all experienced slightly the harshness and remoteness of Antarctica and the Weddell Sea. We had to abort the search for the wreck because the ice was enclosing very, very quickly, and there was hugely thick fog, and it was very, very dangerous for us to stay where we were, which gives us an indication of what Shackleton and his men actually went through. We had to leave in this modern polar research vessel that can break through the ice. What Shackleton and his men must have experienced living on the ice floe in a wooden ship, it's impressive, and it only reiterates to us how much of heroes all of those men were.
And I think, Holly, going on from what you were just saying, what heroes they were, the incredible urge they had to survive.
Yeah.
To me, that speaks to something deep inside the human condition. We all have, as a species, this thing that we're always pushing at our borders, always trying to expand. And, that to me is a little bit of what Shackleton was all about. He was
absolutely
out there exploring, trying to going into the unknown. It was that pushing.
Yeah, exactly, which is why, of course, we're disappointed that we couldn't continue the research. But, we did some incredible science, as you've heard from Lucy, and all of us here feel as if we are living through the spirit of Shackleton by going on this exploration into the heart of the Weddell Sea and spending so much time here and actually getting off onto the ice floe and being over where the wreck went down. It's incredible. Good question.
It is incredible. We're going to turn away from Shackleton for just a minute for a biology question. So I want to note for our classes on YouTube, you can type in questions, tell us your class, tell us what ages, and we'll take the questions and pass them along, as many as we can. But I want to pass along one that reached the world class asked. So this is Miss Ivanova's class in Krasnoyarsk, Russia. What dangers await sea creatures in the Weddell Sea, Lucy?
Well, that is really interesting. So it depends what we call danger, right? So every one of the creatures that lives in the ocean has got things that it eats and things that might eat it. So we could think of dangers being the predators, things that could eat. But we've also got some of the other dangers as well. And those are the ones that I think I should talk about a little bit more. And those are the things like climate change, because those are things that these animals are not adapted to. So they live in a very remote, unique place, and they've really adapted to living here. So as our world changes, then they've got to change too. But the challenge for them is that our world is actually changing quicker than they can evolve and adapt to. So really the biggest danger they have is that we have a really quickly changing world.
Hey, Lucy, I want to hear about killer whales and stuff.
Dangers of killer whales to our seals. Yeah, well, we did see some, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yep. And leopard seals too.
And leopard seals, yeah. So our killer whales and our leopard seals are our top-end predators. So they're at the very top end of the food chain. So everything that's a little smaller, if you're a penguin or another type of seal, then you've got to watch out for those very big, sleek killing machines coming along and crawl up onto the ice as quick as you can.
But everything is just sort of eating everything else down here, isn't it?
Right,
I wouldn't like to be right at the bottom of the food chain. Zooplankton and things like that. Yeah, everything is eating on you.
Yes, but actually that's one really interesting aspect about the life here in Antarctica is that it's a very short food chain in comparison with lots of some of the other places. And this is actually really important because with a short food chain, you don't have as many little steps. So it's actually much more vulnerable to change.
So if you take out one layer, the knock-on effect both directions can be huge.
Yeah, so that's why Antarctica is actually a really vulnerable habitat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
Great question. All right, let's head to Miss Matson's group, who is joining us from the grade 10-12s in Green River, Wyoming. Hi, guys.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Yourself?
We're doing great. Is there any more questions? Peyton, ask your question.
Do you guys do like any work underwater yourselves? Like go underneath yourselves?
So it's a really good question. We actually don't. There are no scuba divers on board the Agulhas 2. We actually have underwater submersibles that do all the work for us because we're looking at depths of up to 3,000 meters down. So we have Ocean Infinity have provided us with 2 autonomous underwater vehicles, which is what Lucy showed you in her slides. So these are equipped with side scan sonar and multi-beam, and they go down to the seabed to scan for any anomalies. This is what we use for when we're looking for a shipwreck. And then they come up to the surface, the data is uploaded, and the target masters and data surveyors go through the data to see if we can locate if there are any shipwrecks on the seabed. But we've also used an autonomous underwater vehicle from Ocean Infinity who have engineered it to be upward looking. So we can actually scan underneath the ice shelf, which is what Lucy showed you. The benefits of using these vehicles rather than divers is, one, it's safer. Two, we can get more data, and we can actually upload a payload of data that we can use at a later date rather than just the naked eye. And also, I mean, we cover a huge amount of area in a short space of time. So yeah, we are very, very fortunate to use these underwater robots, I guess you can call them, the AUVs and the ROVs.
Very cool. If I'm not mistaken, though, Dr. Woodall, you have been down in a submersible where you were in the submersible, correct?
Right, yeah, so on previous expedition, I've been down in a submersible, yeah, so that's like a reverse fishbowl, right? All the fish are looking in at you and you're looking out. A really special, unique experience going from the surface right down to depths, really fully experiencing that, a change going from light to dark.
How deep did you go?
Down to 300 meters. Woo! Yeah.
That's cool.
Very cool.
A lot of the people on board as well are all divers. Most people have gotten into exploration through scuba diving. And yeah, we've got a huge group of scuba divers, including Mensun, actually, who led the first archaeology.
Hey, I directed the deepest
that's what I was about to say, yeah.
Ever been.
Yeah, scuba diving. Well.
That's right.
Awesome. I want to note for our classes too, if you guys are interested in scuba diving, at 10 years old, you are allowed to go learn how to scuba dive. So I really urge you to do that. All the expedition will tell you how amazing an experience it is. All right. We have Miss Daniels' group. So they are grade 4s in Rogers, Arkansas, join us. So if you guys have a question, let's come up. I know you typed in a few, but you're able to say them now. So go right ahead. You should be good to go. Let's see. Miss Daniels' group, how about this? And if not, if the mic still doesn't work, I can pass along your question, but you can see it now. Yeah, you're demuted. I don't know what's going on. So we'll come back and I'll pass along your question. So one of the questions from Miss Daniels' class earlier when they didn't have the thing on the screen was about the Endurance. So it's, have you uncovered or removed any artifacts from the Endurance? When you went down there before things didn't go so well, were you able to find anything new? Were you able to recover anything? What happened?
Yeah, well, actually, we didn't find the Endurance, but if we had, it was a non-touch project. We weren't going to take anything, remove anything. We were going to leave it exactly as we found it.
Yeah.
I suppose there would have been things that might have tempted us. There's Audley's bicycle, some of the scientific samples, things which Lucy would have liked to have had. There was a biologist on board called Clark, and he thought he had discovered a new species of fish. That should still be there. There was an embryo of a seal, which was perfect and in a jar, which they had on the ship. That will still be there. You know, it would be nice perhaps to have brought some things like that up, but no, that wasn't what this project was about. Finding it, recording the site, and that's it.
Excellent. We're going to take our last question from a live group, and then we'll go to some of the ones online, just because I know some of the live groups might have to go for lunch soon. So our last group live is Miss Maxwell's group, so grade 6s in DeWitt, Michigan. Come on up, guys.
She's coming.
Take your time.
So if you guys could estimate how many species of marine animals have you encountered this expedition?
Cool.
Well, that's a really interesting question. So that's actually one of the things we try and do when we first look at the video footage from the ROV. And it's really important for us to do that, to just make sure that we're making a long enough sample. So we know that on each of our survey lines, it was between 30 and 90 different species that we saw, which is loads, right? When we're thinking about things that are maybe from 2 centimeters big up to about 20 centimeters. How many of those are all different? I would say that we probably had about 120 different species that we saw already on this expedition. So some of them are very obviously different, like the octopuses and the awesome sea pigs, but some of them are like those little tiny brittle stars that are just maybe a different color or a slight different length of their arms and things. So we'll have to do a little more analysis on that, but roughly, yeah, just about over 100, 110, 120 species.
Outstanding. All right, Miss Ball's grade 9 science class wanted to know, in short, we'd love to know how you each got to where you are today. Could you give us a little bit of info about your career paths?
Ooh, in short, guys.
So I'll go first as I'm on an end here. So I've had a very curvy path, so it definitely hasn't been direct. I've spent actually time at sea as a navigator on a ship after I did my first degree. I spent time working in the dive industry as a dive master, learning some skills that I would later employ as a scientist. And then I went back and did my doctorate on seahorses, diving around the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, looking for little seahorses and figuring out where they were and why they were there. And then I moved into the deep sea. But the whole link of this for me has been really trying to understand what lives where and why do we care? And for me, that's really important to understand that sort of conservation aspect and why do we as humans care what lives in a bit of the ocean. So that's my path.
So I'm quite new into the exploration world. I studied history at Bristol University in the UK. I graduated last year and I've always been interested in diving. I've done a lot of deep sea diving. I've done cavern diving. I'm a dive master and I've done a lot of wreck diving. So I kind of thought, what can I do to combine my two biggest loves of the world, which is the ocean and scuba diving and history. So I thought I may as well go into work as trying to find shipwrecks. So I found this company, Ocean Infinity, and managed to start working with them. And I've now been with them for almost a year. I've been on a job to try and find a submarine that went missing in the Southern Atlantic. And now I'm on the Weddell Sea Expedition. But I hope that this is the beginning of many, many exciting adventures for me in trying to find shipwrecks across the globe.
Whoa. Okay. I've been directing underwater excavations since my mid-20s. I never stopped. I've directed ships of all periods, all types, all parts of the world, from 600 BC right through to World War II and after. It's been an exciting life. Lots of stuff in museums, wonderful places I've worked in. I directed the excavation of the deepest hands-on ever excavation. That was in the South China Sea. That was working at 80 to 90 meters. More recently, I've been working on a ship at 6,000 meters. That again is the deepest any underwater archaeologist has ever gone. So I've been incredibly privileged. It's been a great career.
And I think the thing that's really interesting about all the people on this expedition and most of the people in the world of exploration or science is how diverse it is and how you don't have to be just a scientist or an archaeologist. There are so many jobs if you want to get involved in any kind of expedition. You can go down the science route, you can be an oceanographer, you can be an archaeologist, but you can also be a chef, you can also be a pilot, you can also be a technician, you can do so many different jobs, you can do management. So there are so many opportunities for everyone to get involved in working on ships and being on expeditions. You just need to go out and do it. It's super exciting for everyone. And, you know, even jobs as being a camera person or a film person. You know, we've got a film crew on board us today. And you know, their job is going around the world and seeing things that people don't get the opportunity to see usually. So yeah, there's many opportunities to get involved in expeditions.
Super cool. I'm sure the kids will echo the sentiment, but I want to be you guys when I grow up. Like, that is awesome. So we have time for a couple more questions. I want to just take another one from a group online. So for Miss Tubby's class, Bridge Learning Campus in Bristol in the UK. So they're learning about Antarctica under Shackleton, and they'd love to know if you've taken dogs on your expedition and if they have cool names like the ones on the Endurance.
We don't have dogs.
We don't have dogs.
Pets of any kind?
No.
I think some of the guys are maybe tempted to take a penguin, but no, we didn't do that. No, yeah, you're right. There were 60 dogs when they started off, and what was really sad was that Shackleton was quite a good organizer, but there were a couple of things he forgot. He forgot to bring gramophone needles so they could listen to records in the evening. And guess what? He forgot to bring worm powder. So a lot of the dogs died because of worm infestation, really nasty, ugly worms. Red worms that just infiltrated the liver and were over a foot long, and they had to destroy many of the dogs.
Yeah, but we don't have any dogs.
No, we don't have any dogs. Nothing to destroy.
No, but there's a lot of beautiful marine life around us. We've got lots of seals out of our window, whales, humpback, killer whales, minke whales. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But also, hello, Bristol. I'm from Bristol. I just wanted to say hi. I was at Bristol Uni. Woo.
That dog story took a very dark turn. I like it. All right.
You gotta be frank. You know what? They ate some of the dogs too when they got hungry.
Yeah, tastes like chicken.
They're in the book.
All right. So we want to take one more question from a group online. So the question is again from, we'll take one from Miss Ives' group, George White Middle School, Hillsdale, New Jersey. Is the process of observing marine life in the Weddell Sea different from other places in the world?
Ooh. Yeah, so that's really interesting. So in essence, no, because we want to find out what's there and document it. But actually going about that is a little harder here because, as you've seen, we're often covered in ice. So, for example, when we were trying to run our line with the ROV to see what was on the seabed, sometimes we had to go in different directions because there was ice in the way and we couldn't go where we wanted to go. So we've had to be quite flexible. Sometimes we've had to pull the equipment because the ice is coming in, like Holly's already spoken about. So in essence, we try and do the same thing. And this is really important for us to try and do the same thing, to try and be consistent so we can compare it with other places in the world. And maybe we can compare it if we get to come back again. Yeah, we have to be a little bit more flexible and think outside of the box, which actually is quite fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Challenging, but also really interesting. It keeps us on our toes, keeps us thinking about different ways of sampling and observing and collecting some of the animals we're interested in looking at.
Yeah, and it's the same with just generally operating technology in Antarctica. It's very difficult because usually we're used to launching and recovering our autonomous underwater vehicles in open water. But here we don't have the luxury of that. There's so much ice everywhere. And I'm not sure, some of you might have read my blog about the loss and recovery of an AUV under the ice flow. So we actually spent a huge amount of time breaking into a heavy ice flow about 2 kilometers into it to free one of our AUVs. So operating in Antarctica is also very difficult. You have to be very inventive.
Outstanding, guys. So before we wrap up, just because classes will be going to lunch, I just wanted to ask you guys if there's, we're going to send links from your entire expedition from Reach the World to all our classes out on YouTube and more. Is there any last messages you guys want to share with classes about exploration, about your expedition, about how they can get involved or learn more?
Yeah, you
go first.
Sure. I just want to say that I remember when I was young and I always wanted to go on adventures and I always wanted to explore and I always thought, oh, I'll never be that person. But actually, like I said earlier, there are so many opportunities to get involved in the world of scientific and archaeological research. And, we are really lucky in our day and age to have the luxury of travel. I would grab every opportunity you can to get out, to see the world, even if that's just in your local area. Just push boundaries and head out and explore. That's all I'll say. We all have an innate spirit of being explorers, and we need to all tap into that for sure.
Yeah, and I think for me, I would just describe myself as someone who's really curious. I'm excited, I'm interesting, and I always ask that question, why? So keep asking those why questions.
That's a good one.
Well, I was going to say something like Holly just said, but she got there first and said it better. So I'd say this then, to all those kids out there, and where was it, Arkansas, New Jersey earlier on, Bristol, yeah. Guys, from us, take the rest of the day off. Go home, chill, we'll sort it out with your teachers later, okay? You've earned it.
That's outstanding. Perfect end. So, guys, what we do at the end of every Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout is we're going to demute everyone's microphones before they go for lunch. So Miss Daniel's class, Miss Paz's class, Miss Matson, Miss Maxwell, join me saying a big thank you to our team in Antarctica. Thank you guys. They got crazy. We appreciate this so much. To our 35 plus 40 classes joining online, this was amazing. So well over 1,000 people participated in this live. Thank you so much to Holly and the team there. You guys are amazing. Lucy, Mensun, thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you so much. It's been great to share with you all our adventures.
And can we do just one final, possibly look out the window of Holly Cabin to see what it looks like today down in Antarctica?
Of course we can. Let me just, you might not, so if I show you out my cabin window, everyone, you might be able to see in the distance, there's some ice in the distance. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see. Can you see just, if you look here?
Yeah.
This is not snow, this is all ice.
Cool.
All of this is ice. So we've actually left the ice flow, but you can see we're now in open water, but this all here, this is ice. Pretty cool.
Very cool, guys. Thank you so much. So nice to bring Hangouts from the edge of the world on amazing expeditions, bringing together scientists from so many different stripes. We appreciate it. We look forward to having you guys back and sharing more online. And have a wonderful rest of your day, guys.